Ladies and gentlemen, last week I asked you on the community tab of my channel, should we review the new Undergang record or the new Respire record? And you overwhelmingly said, fuck Respire, we want to talk about Undergang. I mean that quite literally. Undergang got 64% of the vote, nearly 2/3 of the entire vote. Not gonna lie, I kinda hoped that we would be talking about the Canadian black gaze and alternative metal of Respire, but I am a man of my word, so by popular demand, let's talk about this new record from Undergang. In retrospect, I can't say I'm too shocked that Undergang won that poll, because I have been receiving a lot of requests to review this album in the last couple of weeks. And not just from my regular viewers and contributors here on the Metal Meltdown, but from my friends and peers as well. Ty Tilley, Little Box Stickers, Blaine Smith from Metal Comedy and Banger TV. There were even some people who seemed outright offended that instead of talking about the new Undergang record on the day of its release, Friday, December 4th, I chose to talk about my top 10 favorite metal albums of the year. Some even implying that I was absolutely foolish not only to not review it, but to not have it on my list. So yeah, this is clearly a pretty popular record. Very clearly it's been turning some heads for the last couple of weeks. And it's pretty easy to see why for a multitude of reasons. For one, ignoring the actual music itself, Undergang's work ethic is fucking insane. Since 2009, the band has put out 4 studio albums, 3 solo EPs, 5 split EPs, 5 demos. They even managed to put out a live album in 2018. In fact, since 2009, the only year where they haven't put out any new music is 2016, but they more than made up for it the following year, 2017, with an EP, a demo, and a full-blown studio album. But let's be totally honest here, the main reason why there's so much hype and anticipation surrounding this particular release has to do ultimately with the sound. Slow, churning riffs oozing with pus and slime contrasted with incredibly malicious, stubborn, abrasive, primitive death metal. Angry Metal Guy has described Undergang as a combination of Obituary and Demolich, but I also hear bits and pieces from Funebarum, I hear bits and pieces from Abhorrence, and I especially hear bits and pieces from Symphonies of Sickness era Carcass. If, purely hypothetically, I ever found a mutant swamp creature and I asked it to make a death metal album, I'm certain it would sound a little bit like this. With all this in mind, it wasn't especially shocking that Aldrig, Livet went straight for the jugular first chance it got. What was especially surprising for me, however, is that it quite successfully latched onto me like some kind of symbiotic parasite or some blood-starved vampire. Because this kind of super primitive underground death metal doesn't always really do a lot for me. I'm usually the first person to dismiss this kind of material as being one-note, one-dimensional, bland, repetitive. For instance, the first 2 tracks on this album, Prefluidum and Spontum Bacterial, see the band embracing a chaotic fusion of very primitive death doom and straight-up Carcass-style death metal and gore grind. These tracks are brutal, they are menacing, cram-packed with slow churning riffs and acidic vocal displays and wailing guitars. Then you have a track like Menace Cotter, which is a little bit more raw, a little bit more blunt. I'm reminded of some of the primal underground death metal of bands like Fetid and Witch Vomit, but with the simplicity of very early 6 Feet Under. And then you have the album's title track, which is so slow, so swampy, so heavy, that it almost appears to embrace American sludge metal. You can practically smell the mud and bog water running down Undergang's face as they hammer away monotonously at these very slow, chunky rhythms and passages. It is unrelenting in its utter nastiness, in its utter brutality. There is a tenacity and a dedication to pure extremity here that contrary to what some would like to believe, you don't always find within underground death metal. But as consistently revolting and punishing as so much of this is, sonically, there are some other issues aesthetically and at the very core that do prevent me from giving this the extreme, overwhelming praise that I have seen from so many people so far. For one, while I love the band's dedication to this really extreme, old-school underground death metal sound, I think I personally would like something a little bit beefier in the actual mix itself, especially as far as the percussion is concerned. There are moments on this album where the drumming is isolated, and when it is, you can really hear just how paper fucking thin those drums are. Like, it honestly sounds like that dude is just hitting a cardboard box or a bag of packaging peanuts. And while I would stop myself short of saying the entirety of this album is generic, there are certainly some sections and some passages that are more inventive than others. To the point where, right around the middle of this record, I kinda tuned out of this thing almost entirely. And honestly, the vocals are really hit and miss for me. I mean, granted, there are some deliciously disgusting vocal deliveries on here, utterly toxic garbage, but there are also some very bland and forgettable and generic and cliche vocal deliveries on here. A lot of predictable low-end grunting and moaning with no character, no depth. For the most part, you really are dealing with what I would call a quintessential example of the Cookie Monster death metal guttural. Personally, I think I would give this thing a 3 out of 5. It's by no means a terrible record. I did enjoy it for the most part, but it is nowhere near worthy of the praise and adoration I have seen pouring from almost every angle of the death metal and extreme metal underground. Like, y'all are acting as if this is the death metal album of 2020, but respectfully, this ain't even close. No, sorry, but no, not at all. It is gross, it is murky, it is slimy, it is weird, it is crazy, it is all the things that a death metal album of this type really should be. Executed with genuine confidence and, surprisingly even, just a little bit of clarity and diversity. Things that we don't necessarily see from this particular strain of underground death metal. And that stuff I do like, and for those reasons, I will keep a close eye on what Undergang does in the future. But am I suddenly going to change my top 10 of 2020 as so many of you have implied I should? No, not at all. Still, a damn fine record, 3 out of 5. If you're looking for a really vile, nasty, old-school death metal record with maybe just a little bit more spice and seasoning than usual, you can't really go wrong with this. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately, and you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.